Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ross. Today I'm going to be doing a little mixing tutorial, tips and trick video, a little cheat, if you will. We're going to be talking about ghost notes. Now, essentially, in a lot of beats, things can be quite stale if you're simply sticking to loud hits. And these ghost notes are a great way to get some dynamics in. So we're gonna listen here, and then with some ghost notes. So it adds this kind of dynamic to it where there's something underneath all of the loud hits, and it makes a really nice contrast. And the problem with ghost notes is they're really fucking quiet. And I have a great trick for making sure that in the context of a mix, because these transients are going to pop out nice and loud, even though we can hear the ghost notes in the context of a mix, those are going to disappear very easily. So under the snare, there are these snare wires. They're little wires that vibrate when you hit the snare, and it makes this kind of buzzing sound, which is exactly what we want for our ghost notes. Clean up here a little bit, trying some different stuff. So essentially what we're left with is these ghost notes which aren't loud enough in the mix. If I turn off all these effects, these ghost notes are not loud enough. I can barely hear them. So the solution to this is compressing the shit out of a ghost note mic, what I like to call a ghost note mic, which is just a mic underneath the snare, pointing up at the wires of the snare, which adds this kind of sound. It's a kind of rattly sound, but it works really well once you do some compressing and some limiting and some transient shaping. I'm going to slowly bring this mic in. We can hear there's huge differences before and after. So those ghost notes are now going to pop out in this mix. Imagine there's a bass guitar, maybe there's some, I don't know, this is drum and bass, so there's some synths and some basses and all that kind of stuff, and it's just not popping through. But with this, and then we can make these ghost notes ridiculously loud and not destroy the actual snare too much, because we're doing it on a separate microphone. We still have this transient information snare, and we have our compressed snare. So what exactly is happening here is I've got an EQ doing some cutting in the mids because it sounded gross. Limiting it, not compressing, limiting it so that there is no escaping that threshold. Once that signal goes over that threshold, once that transient mic, well, that snare hit goes over that threshold, it's getting compressed. Because the snare, with the snare, naturally, these snare wires are going to react most to the loud hits. We want to make all of the hits even if on the day the drummer didn't hit them all even, which is not going to. The ghost notes, they're quiet. So as we can hear, right now, all we've basically got is just the transient. The ghost notes are down here. I mean, not even that. They go basically silent, down to 0. So we need to compress it. Get those, get all those ghost notes the same volume, and we're compressing again to get those ghost notes to around the same volume. This time we're being a little bit lenient with it. Then we're transient shaping. Make sure that the hiss isn't too much because it's too long. Limiting again. Get everything the same volume. Nice. And finally we have an EQ to remove some of that rattiness that comes from snare wires. And that's our ghost note mic. And that's a simple, easy way that you can get your ghost notes to come through on a mix. Without that mic, that drum kit recording would have fell apart in the mix. Record your snare bottom mics, compress it. You got a great ghost note rattly mic underneath the snare that will pop through no matter what your actual snare transient, no matter what the compression is for this, it will always come through the mix. That's that. Bye bye.